means that I don't have what you call an alibi.
Well, yes you do, Mrs. Norris. You were at the corner of Valley and Magnolia.
With nobody to prove it.
Well, I didn't say you had a good alibi, but you do have an alibi.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Columbo podcast, where our alibis are good, but not great.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody saw us there.
They saw shapes. Two figures.
It could have been us.
Two Scottish figures.
A tall one and a short ginger one.
Get out of here. You're not short and ginger. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm not too bad. I'm, well, a little under the weather tonight, but not too bad.
Bit of a headache?
Yeah.
Okay. We should say that we have recently moved location of where we record, and we're using two different microphones at the same time. So if the sound quality is not as good as our previous efforts, that's the reason, and we apologise.
We're working on it.
We are. Ian, what did you think of this week's episode? It was a return of a familiar face.
A fan favourite, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pleasing episode. I enjoyed it. That's 3 really decent episodes in a row.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. It was a classic episode.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that, I mentioned last week, there are the sort of A+ episodes, and there are a handful of those. This one just misses out, and the reason is the audience is withheld information. I prefer, as a viewer, to know everything that the murderer is doing and why he's doing it, and in this case, there were a few bits and bobs that we were not privy to.
Yeah, not quite as bad as Requiem.
No.
But still.
Yeah. Sure. But still, yeah, really enjoyable episode. Robert Culp, back in fantastic form.
Yeah, a slightly different character again.
Mm-hmm.
There's a common thread through these 3 villains.
Yeah.
And, they've got that sort of almost arrogance about them and this sort of certainty of purpose. But there's twists. They're not the same guy, just in a different setting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we start then, Ian, will you do the honours of this week's summary?
A motivational researcher experimenting in subliminal messaging disposes of a difficult client in a cold-blooded act of murder. Outwitted by an employee, he commits a second killing to cover his tracks, again planning the act meticulously. Columbo must read between the lines if he is to get the better of an intelligent, calculating villain. But can he get his message across in time, or has he finally met his match?
Thank you, Ian. We start off in Kulp Industries, and we see a man in an office. He's returning a gun to a display cabinet.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Dead Weight.
Right, yes.
And we notice that he has been adjusting it in some way, and he's been messing around with a lamp. We don't know, that's what I referred to earlier.
Yeah,
we
it's
don't know
not
what
clear
he's
what's
doing
going
here.
on, yeah.
But there is ominous music, so...
Yes, and he plays a tape recording at that point as well, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, he sets up a tape recorder behind a stage in a sort of lecture theatre. It's the screening room, I think we come to know it as.
Yeah.
And we also see him turn up the thermostat, the heating.
Yeah, up very high.
Mm-hmm. We then go to a processing lab, a film processing lab, and we see him splice an image of an ice-cold Coke or cola into the film of a desert scene.
Yes, it clearly it's a long, tall, cool drink.
It is. And we see him deliberately break or adjust a monitor so that it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not just us that sees that, though, because one of his colleagues or employees arrives.
Roger, the technician.
He does.
So he walks in just at the moment when Keppel of Keppel Industries is making this amendment.
Yeah, and Keppel can't be sure what Roger's seen or hasn't seen, so he rolls with it.
Yeah, he's a bit startled, but he gives him this tape, this film, and he tells him they'll be running some sort of show in 1 hour. And as he leaves, we see Roger, with his suspicious mind, inspect the movie reel.
Yeah.
So Robert Culp, we mentioned him earlier. He returns. We don't need to say too much about him. We have discussed him in what episodes was that, Ian? Can you remember?
He was in the second episode of each of the first 2 seasons. He was in Death Lends a Hand, and then he was in The Most Crucial Game.
Yeah. So if you want to know more about Robert Culp, you can listen to those 2 episodes.
And we'll find something for the show notes for this episode, a nice link of
You
some
always
sort.
do. So we go to Keppel's main office.
Yeah.
Within the Keppel Industries building. And he places a call with a disguised voice to a Mrs. Norris. And he tells her that her husband, Victor, has been having an affair with a Tanya Baker, a model who Victor hired for a bathing suit commercial.
Yeah.
And Keppel pretends that he is this Tanya's boyfriend. And he also claims that he was suspicious, so he hired a private investigator, perhaps it was an investigator or a brimmer,
It could have been.
who has photo evidence of this alleged affair.
Right.
Now, after a bit of deliberation, Mrs. Norris agrees to meet with him in order to catch her husband Victor and Tanya together in the act.
Yeah.
So there was a great deal of similarity here to Death Lends a Hand.
Yeah,
don't
it
you
was the
think?
same setup at the start of that episode.
Mm-hmm.
You had the same idea with the suspicious partner. Although, it wasn't a suspicious partner in this case, she was made suspicious. But it's the same idea.
I've often wondered, sometimes the show dismisses or ignores telephone records.
Yeah, and sometimes it uses them.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that it does, if it was consistent in ignoring it, that's fair enough. But sometimes we do find that Columbo has checked with the phone company.
Yeah, and sometimes the information you can get is really specific, and other times it's really vague.
Mm. We go to the outer office. And this is later on, and we see Mr. Norris, Vic Norris, arrive by chauffeur. So he is obviously a wealthy, important man.
Absolutely. He's here for a screening of some kind.
Yes, there are other guests there who we come to learn are his employees.
Yes.
And they're waiting for him. And they're waiting to see this film. But Norris is not in a good mood. He is enraged.
He was very upset with Keppel.
Why?
Because Keppel has negatives or photos of some kind showing Norris in a compromising situation.
I think we have a clip of this exchange.
Would you like to have a drink before the screening or afterwards?
There isn't going to be any after the screening drink. Unless I get those negatives.
Well, Vic, I haven't made up my mind about that yet. But I have something for you, because I know how much you'd like it. Caviar. Royal Iranian Beluga. It's just come in. Jimmy, put that down there for Mr. Norris.
Yes, sir.
I can see why you'd have a hard time making up your mind. How many of your other clients have you framed with Tanya? Wouldn't surprise me a bit. This whole institution was built on her remarkable body. I must ask the DA to look into that.
You're turning into a crusader on me, Vic.
Enjoying it.
With a martyr complex?
Could be.
But you have to die to become a martyr.
That follows.
Motive was established in that clip.
Kinda.
You think?
I wasn't convinced about the motive in this case.
Why not?
Because it wasn't entirely clear what Norris was threatening to do.
Norris was going to expose Keppel's blackmail to I think he mentions the DA or the assistant DA.
Well,
And that would have ruined his career and reputation.
it's a very similar, again, to Death Lends a Hand, a very similar situation.
Mm-hmm. Even with Norris being so angry, Keppel plays it cool. And he offers him his favourite Iranian caviar, which Norris, being a large chap, obviously likes his food,
Indulges.
indulges and devours. And then Keppel invites all of the guests to the screening room and he dismisses the waiter for the evening.
Yep.
Quick listener question here. I couldn't find the waiter in the credits. So if anyone knows, I think he's called Jimmy.
Okay. If anyone can pick that one out of a lineup.
Tell us who Jimmy is. That would be great.
I know that the listeners are usually good at this, so we'll see what they come up with.
So after the guests have went to the screening room, we see Keppel going to his private office and he puts the gun into his jacket.
Yeah, he retrieves the gun and he's got it ready for use.
We're off to the screening room now. And Keppel advises the audience that the film is complete, minus the narration.
Yeah.
That will be edited in afterwards.
Sure.
And in the meantime, Keppel himself will stand up on stage behind a curtain and perform the narration live.
Establishing an alibi.
Mm-hmm. That's his intention. He tells them that he is proud of the film, and we then learn that this is a marketing ad, and the audience is existing clients or potential clients of this new work.
Yeah, they're talking about the power of American marketing and all this. It's very grand.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just, I suppose it's still in the, not the infancy of our marketing and advertising, but I suppose it's the infancy of taking it to a new level, understanding consumer psychology. Yeah. Consumers have probably, by this point, became more sophisticated and aware of the more obvious techniques of the 50s, let's say.
Sure, well, we're moving past, you had Mad Men is set in the 60s with the big advertising companies, and this is then obviously beyond that.
Yes. So the lights dim, the movie rolls, and Keppel is just off stage behind a curtain, and he starts to read.
Yeah.
And we see Roger sitting in the projection booth.
Yep, he's doing his job.
Mm-hmm. So after a period, Keppel leaves the stage unseen, and he has set the recording to play and take over.
Yeah. And he monitors from a desk in his office.
Yes. So the film spends time showing and discussing the desert scene that we discussed earlier. And you see Victor get progressively more uneasy as he gets hotter and sweatier.
Yeah. So
we have to remember here that the heating's been turned up. He's been munching this caviar. He's a big chap anyway, in an enclosed space.
He's struggling.
Yeah, struggling.
He's not the only one, though. A couple of them are quite warm, so it's interesting he's the only one that gets up and leaves.
He's the only one who has devoured the caviar to that extent.
That's true, and also he's the boss, so if they're there to do a job...
Well, it's mentioned earlier, later on.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to leave.
Essentially.
Yeah. So Norris decides to leave for a drink from a fountain in the hall.
That's right.
We see him in the hall, he's drinking from this water fountain. And what happens?
Well, at this point, Bart Keppel comes out, shouts his name, and when he looks round, shoots him, apparently with a single shot straight through the heart, so he's clearly a marksman of some skill.
Yep. Doesn't waste any time. He then returns to his own office.
Yep, puts the gun in the cabinet and then fiddles about with the lamp. It wasn't clear what he was doing there.
There's some very sort of fast-paced and intense music here.
Yeah.
Creating the sort of drama of the scene.
But the music was quite good in this, actually.
It was a nice, nice soundtrack. Or nice score.
Yeah. And Keppel then returns to the wings of the stage in the nick of time, picks up the narration as the cassette drops off.
Fantastically well timed, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. He's nothing if not precise, this man.
The film ends and Keppel asks the audience, the rest of the guests, where Norris is.
Yeah.
And he's told that he left and they complain themselves about the heat.
Yeah.
And they all leave the screening room.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's turned the temperature up, so that's why it's not subliminal messaging or anything like that.
No. We see Keppel rewinding the tape.
Yep, and then he's going to record over his narration with the chatter from outside.
Yeah, so he follows them outside. He's the last to sort of leave.
Yeah.
And they, of course, discover the body of Norris. And immediately, as Keppel appears, he starts, as you say, the recorder, he puts it on a table in the hall. Yeah?
Yep, which records what folk are saying.
Mm-hmm. We then move on to later in the evening and Columbo's first appearance.
Yep. He's getting briefed on what's happened.
By a sergeant.
Yep, there's been a shot to the heart with a small caliber bullet.
Mm-hmm. And they're hunting for the weapon. It's the guests, the people in the building have been searched, haven't found it.
That's it.
And they're about to go through the rest of the building looking for this.
That's right.
And Columbo is helping himself to the party food.
Yeah, he explains why he's hungry, though.
Very interesting, this explanation.
Yes.
Which is?
He's been working hard on his previous case, which we saw last week.
Ah, now it's not the previous case.
Or current case, perhaps.
Yes. That's the way I interpreted it anyway.
Right.
That
simultaneous
he's been working on these two. So not only is Columbo a super cop, a genius, he's able to multitask on these things, and
that's a lot of skill.
And it does answer some of the questions we had before about Columbo turning up dishevelled and tired when he shouldn't have been.
He's been working 2 cases at once.
If you're working 2 high-profile cases, then it takes it out of you.
Let's check the continuity. Is he wearing the same outfit?
You can go back and do that.
I don't think I need to go back. I think he was wearing the same outfit.
I'm sure
I think it's safe to say. But yeah, he's snacking away, and the sergeant says to him, "There's something a bit better over here."
Yeah, and he shows him the caviar.
Yes, I don't think Columbo's familiar with caviar.
No, but he's not scared to try new things.
Well, that's it. He tucks in and he seems to enjoy it.
Yeah, and he's informed by this other cop that it is $80 per jar.
he's outraged. He's got $15 worth in his mouth.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say he was outraged.
No,
I think
he's stunned or shocked.
Stunned
yeah.
and amused because he chows down on it. He doesn't spit it back out. We go back out to the hall.
Yeah, you've got a black outline where the body had been.
Yeah, and Columbo is confused as to how the murderer would have known that a man watching that movie, or that,
how
that
did
piece
he know
of
it was
film,
going to come out? Yeah.
And he notices the tape recorder, and he seems quite intrigued. Columbo is often intrigued by technology and new things.
Yeah, he's had the opportunity to go and speak with the coroner, but he chooses to put that off for now. He's going to investigate this lead with the tape.
Again, this refers back to what I said before. If the clue is on the body, he would have been over at the body.
Yeah.
But in this case, he's able to hone in on
That's right.
the technology here. He discovers the recorder belongs to Keppel.
Yes.
And then Keppel arrives with another cop, and he's really acting very upset, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's in a daze, in a
That's
haze.
right. He's kind of just stumbling around, and Columbo talks to him briefly.
We hear him bemoaning the ineffectiveness of the security guards or system.
That's right.
And Columbo introduces himself. And this is nice. He calls him Mr. Keppel.
Yes, he's corrected in that, though.
To what?
It's Dr. Keppel.
Mm-hmm. Now, I thought this was a nice subtle way of indicating the ego of this man. Nice bit of efficient script writing. And it happens again later on. So we do understand he is very much driven by what others think of him. Status, yeah. And I think that would be something that Columbo would immediately understand and then use to his advantage.
I would think so.
So Columbo inquires about the recorder, and Keppel tells him that what he does is he uses it to record the comments of people who have been watching the film after they leave.
It's a standard practice.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's customer feedback. It's a questionnaire.
Yeah.
He then explains to Columbo that he is a motivational researcher, and that these films are just a very small part of one aspect of the work that he does. And that Norris himself was merely a business acquaintance.
Yeah.
So he's trying to distance himself from, this victim.
Yeah, there's no motive that's apparent. So.
Where do we go next, Ian?
Columbo goes up to the projection room where Roger is, and he gets a bit of a tour.
Yes. Roger is describing the equipment, and he tells him about the monitors. One shows the reaction from the audience, and the other is a view of the hall. And
Columbo, just to check, you want to say, have you got a video of the shooting?
That would make it. Columbo must be
that
thinking,
would be a really short episode.
all my cases, they're always some really convoluted, contrived, and
maybe this time
I'll turn up and there'll be a video and we'll say that's it there. But although there have been cases in which we'll get to, which that do provide photographic evidence,
right? And
Columbo still manages to unravel what seems like an obvious killer.
Before long, though, Columbo realises that he's very thirsty.
Yes, and he is offered
iced tea.
Yeah, from a flask.
Yes.
By Roger.
Roger's thermos of iced tea.
And he takes a drink and indicates that another glass would be appreciated.
Yes, he's very thirsty.
Mm-hmm. I really like this character, Roger.
Yeah, he's got a great haircut for starters. Very 70s haircut.
Brilliant haircut. But his performance, there was a charisma about him, and I just like the way he played him. He seemed quite content. It was a subtle performance. Every time I watch this, I'm always quite enamoured by the performance of Roger.
Yeah.
How he delivers his lines. He was played by Chuck McCann, born in 1934. he came from a very show-busy family. I think his parents were all involved, and by all accounts, he was a veteran of show business by the age of 11.
Okay.
He has done a lot of voice-over work. DuckTales, The Fantastic Four, Iron Man, the Powderpuff Girls. I know you're a big fan of that.
Heard of it, but I've not got a lot of experience of watching it.
He has acted in Kojak, Starsky and Hutch. He, strangely enough, was the lead in a movie from 1971 entitled The Projectionist.
There you go. Typecast.
I'm not sure, perhaps he gained
This
this
could
role
be a nod to that, maybe.
I think maybe he was chosen for the role because of
That'd
that.
be interesting.
He was also a close friend, or still is, a close friend of Hugh Hefner.
All right.
A regular at the Playboy Mansion, and he'd done a lot of Playboy video voiceover work for Hugh.
I've not seen any of those videos. Have you seen them, Gerry?
I've heard of them. Not seen them at all. Not really my thing.
No.
Where were we?
Well, Columbo's about to bring in a family trope.
Yes. Oh, well, so before that, yes. The lead into that is that Columbo notices Roger is reading a book about land investment or real estate.
Yeah.
And so what's this trope you talk about, Ian?
He talks about his uncle who works in...
Is it an uncle or is it a cousin?
Is it a cousin? I thought it was an uncle.
Maybe it was an uncle, yeah.
Works in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Buys dirt.
Must be a colloquialism.
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 Yeah. It could well be, yes, a well-known phrase for somebody who buys and sells land, perhaps. Plots of land, perhaps.
So, Columbo asks to see the film that Keppel was showing that evening. But Roger tells him that it's already been picked up. And sometimes this happens. Depends what the client wants, what Keppel wants. And in this case, he indicates, I think, that Keppel had arranged for it to be picked up.
That makes sense, because the client wasn't in a position to really do anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
On account of having been shot in the heart.
Yes. And Columbo then notices something on the ground.
It's a nickel.
Explain what that...
There's a nickel trick that Roger explains to him. So when the reel is playing, they put this nickel in the reel, so that when it runs out of film, it spins round and the nickel falls out onto the ground, alerting the projectionist to the fact that he needs to change the reel.
Yeah, so it's a trick of the trade.
Yeah.
And
Roger indicates certainly that he usually does this.
Yes, because he's not interested in watching movies.
Yeah.
And Columbo can't believe this. He says, he loves watching movies. Some he's seen as many as 5 times.
That's a lot of times.
Although, in fairness, back then it probably would be. You don't have home video or
Sure.
DVD, so how do you get to watch something? It would be on telly infrequently.
I think there's probably only one movie that I've seen 5 times in the cinema.
I've not seen it. You've seen a movie 5 times?
I really enjoyed it.
Can I guess here?
On you go.
It wasn't any of these Lord of the Rings ones, was it?
No. It was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Which I thought was brilliant.
Good. Anyway, Roger, he guesses what type of film Columbo has seen 5 times.
Right.
Can you remember
No,
his
I
guess?
can't remember. What did you guess?
It was Westerns.
Right.
And Columbo seemed to agree that was the correct answer. Then Columbo leaves, and we see him, like he did with Keppel, he is suspicious, and he looks up at he ponders the monitor that was broke. So Roger's starting to put a few things together here, isn't he?
I think he's doing his own little investigation.
Yeah, it won't end well for him, I don't think.
Well, we'll find out shortly.
We head back to Keppel's office, and Columbo enters and immediately antagonises Keppel by calling him Mr. again.
I think that's on purpose.
Definitely deliberate, isn't it?
Yes.
He's trying to rile him, make him make mistakes, because I think he knows that he's quite a cool customer.
Yes, you need to get under his skin somehow.
Mm-hmm.
He spots the guns on display on the wall.
Yes.
And Keppel's calm about that also.
Well, just going back to what we're saying there about the type of character he is, this is a sort of juxtaposition from last week, where, with Keppel here, and he actually is very impatient, doesn't have any time, isn't interested in helping Columbo.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to play that role.
No.
Nelson Hayward was trying to be the politician, wasn't he? Trying to help as much
magnanimous and supportive, yes.
It's a nice contrast.
Sure.
And as you say, Columbo notices the guns in the cabinet, and Keppel confirms that they are active and invites Columbo to have them checked out. And again, this reminded me of Dead Weight.
Dead Weight, yes.
Because there was guns and there was a coffin-shaped crate, and there's just so much that, Columbo would have to check out.
Yeah.
Columbo then asks about what happened during the movie, the film.
Yeah, he asks some questions that he doesn't think Keppel should know the answer
No.
to.
Which were?
First of all, why did Norris leave the room, and
Mhm.
also who else left the room?
Yes. And he admits that he did not see anyone leave.
But he assumed that they hadn't
Yes, and because they all worked for Norris and would not have the
authority to leave, perhaps,
Yes.
yeah.
And Columbo asks if Keppel could think of anyone who would want to kill Norris. Now, we've seen this trick before, he pretends that he can't, but deliberately...
Yeah, it's like a false reluctance.
Mm-hmm. He tells Columbo that Norris was having an affair with Tanya Baker.
Right.
And when Columbo suggests that perhaps Tanya is the killer, Keppel then tells him that 70% of the time it is the spouse.
He says, go and read it in a book, or go and look it up.
And Columbo says that he will definitely check Mrs. Norris's alibi.
Yeah, Columbo acts like he appreciates advice, but I don't think he feels he needs
No.
to be told how to do his own job.
Not at all. But again, he's using the ego, isn't he, of Keppel here.
Yes, he's playing on it.
And as Columbo leaves, he makes an observation by praising Keppel's self-control, again playing on this ego.
Sure.
He talks about the fact that Keppel had someone pick up the film from the booth after he found out about the murder. And Columbo suggests that not many people would go about their daily business, daily tasks after witnessing such a crime.
Yeah.
We have a clip of this exchange.
Do you have time? I just want to make one personal observation. I hope you don't mind. I was speaking to a projectionist, and he told me that shortly after the murder, you called to have your film picked up and delivered to your vault, and I got to thinking about that. You know that most people, when they're around a murder, they just don't stop to do anything like that.
No, I don't suppose they would. But I'm not most people, Lieutenant. I am a very well-organized man, and I don't panic. The next logical thought, after we'd found the body, was to return the film to the vault.
That was my observation. You're a man of enormous self-control. Thank you very much.
It certainly seems like Keppel has answers he's confident in.
But these answers may prove his downfall.
Perhaps. We'll see.
Columbo says that ballistics will need to check out these guns. Now, we know that Columbo, or he should suspect that these are the murder weapons because they might well be,
Yeah.
but he doesn't immediately get people into...
No, but I think he's going from the attitude of Keppel. He's maybe suspecting he's not going to learn anything here.
Yeah, no, I mean that if you have guns in a
In the
cabinet,
building, I suppose, yeah.
you get the guys in immediately. You don't leave them overnight to be someone to do whatever with them.
Yeah.
You get them checked out immediately, but hey,
Who knows?
Who knows? And then we have one more thing. Columbo can't understand why Keppel would turn on the recorder that he had after seeing a body.
Yeah, and Keppel's excuse is that he started it prior.
Yes, immediately after the screening ended and before he saw the body.
Yep.
Seems plausible enough, but again, as we said, his answers...
They're going to, yes, cause him difficulty in the future because the what's recorded doesn't match up with his story.
No. So we're off to Mrs. Norris's home now. And what happens here?
She discusses with Columbo, we heard at the top of the show actually, whether she has an alibi.
She tells Columbo about the call she received from this supposed boyfriend, which was in fact from Keppel.
Yeah.
It's understandable in these type of TV shows where you don't want to portray real life because it wouldn't make for good TV. But you often find that her husband has just been murdered. She seemed very calm and nonchalant about things.
Well, I think she's just learned, or she just believes she's been learned, that she's found out that her husband was cheating on her, and that's kind of distressed her. I think she's almost in a kind of a shock here because the guy that she was meant to meet didn't show up, so she doesn't know what to believe, and now her husband's dead.
Yeah, she confirms that she waited from 8:30 until 9:30.
Yes.
And she is quite aware that perhaps she may be a suspect, and she accepts that she's no alibi. But Columbo assures her that he believes her, and as you say, we had that little clip at the start.
Yeah.
Explain again, what is Columbo's reason for believing her alibi?
Columbo tells her a story about his own wife and how when they go to watch movies or TV shows with crimes, that she never works out who the right killer is. But that even she would have come up with a better alibi than I was standing on my own in a street corner for an hour.
We could perhaps mention Robert Middleton just now. He played Victor Morris.
Okay.
He died in 1977, aged 66. He was a character actor known for The Desperate Hours, Love Me Tender with Elvis, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, and Rawhide. It's a bit of a western.
That's quite a glittering array, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I wonder also if that's why they mentioned westerns earlier when they talk about Columbo's favourite movies.
Yeah, could be. From Mrs. Norris's home, we go to a supermarket.
Yeah.
I quite liked this scene. It was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We see Keppel and some of his colleagues monitoring shoppers and through a TV monitor.
Essentially a CCTV in the supermarket. Columbo comes in, so they're tracking him through the store.
Did you notice Keppel's fantastic bright yellow jacket?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Very stylish. It's almost kind of 80s.
Yeah.
He's ahead of his time.
And Columbo finds him out the back watching these monitors. And this is another bit of humour which I liked. Can you remember what Columbo first does here?
Well, first of all, he's thrilled to see himself on the screen.
Yeah. And
then he talks about how his wife wants to be on TV. Yeah. She thought she would be a better housewife, because the housewives in the ads aren't real housewives.
No.
But Keppel points out to him he doesn't make ads.
Yeah, and Columbo says, Columbo pulls a picture out of his wife.
Yes.
He's about to show her when Keppel tells him that he's not a movie maker.
He's quite happy with that because he did what he said he would do. Mm-hmm. He's also read every book that Keppel's ever written. Yeah, again, this is ego massaging, isn't it? Definitely. He didn't buy the books, he didn't use the police funds, he went to the local library. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. And because of this ego massaging, he is on side with Keppel for the time being. Yeah. And Keppel invites him to wander around the supermarket whilst he does his business. Sure. And we see him in the aisles, and he's adjusting a very overt camera. Now, this isn't any sort of spy camera in the ceiling. No, it's substantial. It's a TV camera in the middle of the aisle, pointing at people. Yeah. What would they have thought about that back then? You wouldn't know, would you? I suppose it was the beginning of the erosion of civil liberties in the name of security. Okay. Columbo tells him that the reason he is there is the guns in his office have been confirmed by ballistics that they haven't been shot before, and they're not even the correct caliber. Okay. So apparently giving him his guns the all clear. Yes. And then Keppel asks about Mrs. Norris, and Columbo tells him that no one can be ruled out, so we understand he already does suspect Keppel. Yes. Doesn't give him any information. He plays along, or he goes along with Keppel's suggestion that Mrs. Norris may still be... Yeah, what he doesn't want to do at this point is antagonise Keppel that way. No. I think he wants to let that play out a little bit longer. Yeah, because we see Keppel sort of try to hide his satisfaction at Mrs. Norris not being ruled out. Yeah. And then Columbo mentions that there was a note from the Norris office which said that Keppel was to be terminated. Yeah, this is an interesting one because that's Columbo's line on what the motive could be. Mm-hmm. Whether it's true or not, he could just be making this up. We don't know because it's never really expanded on, is it? No, I think it would be true because when Victor Norris arrives at the meeting, he's already unhappy and he's not friendly with him. It's certainly possible, and that in itself could be a motive, although it wouldn't be a very good motive because surely the relationship would end at the point that Norris was killed anyway. Yeah. But anyway, Keppel's got a response. He says he only worked with Norris on a project-by-project basis, so the termination would be on completion of that piece of work. It wouldn't have been a permanent thing. No, but he may well be reinstated down the line. Yeah. Then we have a one more thing, and Columbo's puzzled. And Keppel confirms that when the film finished in the screening room the previous night, there was a discussion about about where Norris was. Yeah. But this does not support Keppel's claim that he turned on the recorder when he said he did. It's not on the tape. It's not on the tape. And we've got Keppel stumped at this point, and he agrees that the answer must be... He didn't record until later, but he doesn't give a reason. No. He just... There's no other explanation. He has to sort of hold his hands up and say... Yeah. And he's left in a contradiction, because it's the balance between does he get stressed or does he not get stressed? Does he act rationally or does he act irrationally? Or automatically.
Yeah, well, okay, so Columbo asks then why he did this. Why did he turn the recorder on when he saw the body? What Keppel says is that, people do strange things under stress. And then we get Columbo, as you say, tying him in knots here, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's fantastic, actually, the way he does this.
I think Columbo at this point knows.
Yeah, well, Columbo is Keppel is the prime target here. This is where Columbo is going to focus all his energies from now on. Keppel asks where this is all going, what it proves. Columbo admits that it doesn't prove anything, but he says it's just a feeling like a marble in his head running around. There's something in there that he can't quite get out and can't quite pick up on.
I like that analogy about the marble. It made me think of the kids' board game Screwball Scramble. Don't know if you ever played that.
I do remember that, yeah.
With the tilting surfaces.
This is nice as well, because Keppel, being a man who studies the mind, he does appreciate Columbo's thinking in his mind. He knows he's not an idiot. And he says so. He says, I think you are feeling a little empty-headed, but I don't think you are empty-headed at all. And I think this is the first time so early that we have a killer understand.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yes, his adversary here, the strength of him.
That's it, and there's going to be a contest between these two for the rest of the episode.
Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic contest. It gets better. There's some great.
Well, Keppel's got a hurdle to get over first, of course.
Yeah. Columbo asks him if he can view the film, and Keppel tells him that he has simply to call his office and arrange for it to be picked up. We're back to Keppel's office. We see Roger making a big mistake.
I'm shaking my head because he's doing the same thing they all do.
We knew this was coming. Explain what happens, Ian.
Roger has figured it out. He knows that Keppel did it, and he thinks he can blackmail him. And that is a critical error. It's been a critical error since Columbo began 2.5 seasons ago, and it remains a critical error at this point because, as far as I'm aware, only one blackmailer has actually survived to the end of the episode.
Who was that?
In Any Old Port in a Storm, the secretary.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the only one.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of them seem to meet their demise fairly quickly because in Columbo, once you're a killer, you may as well become a serial killer.
May as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Roger's asking for $50,000.
Yeah, this ties into the real estate project that we talked about earlier on.
And I thought this was, again, another really nice dynamic here which made this episode. And it's very smart. So, Keppel says, yeah, sure. But I want you to sign a document agreeing to this blackmail.
Essentially making himself an accessory.
After the fact.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really nice, actually.
Yeah.
Nice approach. You don't often see that.
To an extent, he's also playing for time to figure out how to deal with this.
Yep.
But by putting Roger in the frame of mind that something is going to happen, he gives himself an opportunity to figure out how to handle it.
Yeah. Because Keppel tells him he'll have the money that night, and Roger leaves.
Yeah, and I think we understand that Keppel will end up killing him.
He does seem sort of unhappily resigned to what he's going to have to do.
Yeah.
And we should say that in this scene as well, what we hear is one of the motives was that Roger's not making enough money as a projectionist with Keppel Industries, and he has to moonlight at a cinema, a theatre.
Yes.
So he gives that information to...
Critical information.
Critical, yeah. So we're back to the Mrs. Norris's house.
This one reminded me of Stitch and Crime, when Spock was waiting to break into the house.
Yeah. Yeah, so Keppel's watching the house and he waits for Mrs. Norris to leave with, I think, a maid or a friend.
Yeah.
Before entering and stealing a handgun from the desk.
Yeah, he turns into their drive before they're even off the street.
Yeah.
You can still see them driving off as he's turning into their house.
He likes to take a chance.
Yeah, it's a bit chancy, we might say.
From there we go to the Magnolia Cinema Theatre where Roger is working.
Yes, and Roger is so naive.
But just on that as well, we see that the cinema is playing High Plains Drifter. And apparently you can get in for $1 before 7 p.m. Monday to Friday.
Bargain.
Yeah, this is a cinema, say, where Roger works.
Magnolia Theatre.
Keppel enters the booth, and what happens?
They have a conversation. Roger still doesn't realise what a bad mistake he's made. Keppel tells Roger he's found a way to resolve this. Pulls out a gun, and Roger suddenly realises, no! the most ridiculous thing. I mean, he's smart enough to figure the crime out. He knows this guy's capable of killing, and it doesn't occur to him that might be how he would handle this. It's naive in the extreme.
I suppose to try and blackmail a killer, you have to be slightly naive in the first place, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think he's very... It doesn't fit with the rest of his character, because he's come across as a fairly bright guy.
Here's the thing.
Although I suppose a desperate guy, and maybe he just sees this as one opportunity.
Yeah, I think desperation, but yeah, that has been indicated. We talk about chancy things, Ian.
Yeah.
This is another chancy thing, isn't it? Do you think you could walk into a cinema that you don't know very well, and get into the projection booth and back out without anyone seeing you or knowing? I mean, how do you know he didn't work with a partner? How do you know there wasn't other staff milling around? How would you know? How would you get into a projection booth in a cinema?
Yeah, but I suppose he wouldn't have been exposed that way. He was arranging to meet Roger. Maybe he even called him and said he was going to come.
Okay.
And got instruction. Although, because Roger didn't seem... I mean, he was shocked when he kind of snuck up on him, but he wasn't shocked to see him, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Anyway, he pulls out the gun and shoots Roger.
Dead.
Dead.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
We go back to Keppel Industries. And Columbo is being educated by an editor on the technique of subliminal marketing via cuts being inserted into film, and he's shown an example of a nice juicy burger during a motor racing video.
Yeah. You a fan of the subliminal technique?
No, I think it's been thoroughly debunked as nonsense.
Okay. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Keppel arrives.
Yep, he enters and he's obviously a bit wary about what this chap is revealing to Columbo. He's getting far too close to the truth, isn't he?
Yeah. It's too near the bone. Or near the bone? Is that the right phrase? Yeah.
Too close to the bone.
Yes. I think near the knuckle, close to the bone.
Yeah.
One of these things, yeah.
Yeah, so he asks him what got him interested in these subliminal cuts, and Columbo tells him that it was in fact his book.
Yes.
And then they discuss how successful it was, the technique in increasing the sales of popcorn during a trial, but apparently the technique was outlawed. And then Columbo tells him that he would like Keppel to help him with two questions.
He's identified two key questions here.
Which were?
Why did Norris leave the theatre? And how did the killer know when he'd leave the theatre?
Yes. Good questions.
Yes.
Before we answer those questions, I'm going to briefly mention the actor who played the editor.
Okay.
So that was a George Winner, and he was born in 1945. In lots of TV shows and programmes and movies over the years, but the reason I'm mentioning it is that he is in one of my favourite movies of all time. He played Marvin Gillette in Fletch, the lawyer who is always trying to track down Fletch for alimony.
Okay.
Great movie. Not hugely
popular?
It's popular. Chevy Chase, yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant film from the 80s. You should check it out. But he was also in Matt Houston. He played Erwin Bernstein in Hill Street Blues. He was in She's the Sheriff, Good Advice, Spaceballs, another 80s comedy favourite. And he was in the Rockford Files as well.
There you go.
So there we go. So these two questions. And what Columbo says that he's going to make the assumption that the killer was in the building already. And he asks Keppel to help him out in help him work out how the killer knew the moment or the time Norris would leave.
Yeah, Keppel's unhelpful at this point.
One thought I had, surely if we assume that the killer was inside, could he not simply have waited for him to come out at any point?
I suppose it depends if he wants to be seen, because he needs him to come out on his own.
Sure, yeah.
So he might not have come out. But I get the point that you don't need to know how he knew when he'd come out, but that he would come out is more of the correct question.
Anyway, Keppel claims that it would be impossible to know this, and he believes that the killer still came from outside. And he's told them who he thinks did it. Columbo then owns up to stealing something.
This is a lead into another line of investigation, but he talks about how he took caviar. And Keppel either isn't thinking about why that's relevant, or is just playing it cool, but he says, it's not a problem, hope you enjoyed it. Columbo points out it made him very thirsty.
Yes. And he then produces the autopsy report of Norris.
Showing that he'd eaten the caviar.
A lot of that caviar.
Yeah.
And Columbo then asks him, Keppel, to revise his opinion on what might have caused Norris to leave.
Yeah, and Keppel's recalculating this as he goes along.
Well,
he's thinking, what can he say?
Yeah, he's forced to admit it now. He
Yeah,
can't
it could have
pretend
been
he doesn't.
subliminal messaging of a long, tall, cool drink.
Yes. Then Keppel describes Columbo as a very interesting man.
Yeah.
And he advises Columbo to look for the cut. He says, okay, what you need to do now is take it a step further. You need to find this cut in the film. And then he realises that Columbo, being the smart man that he is,
Will already have checked.
but to no avail.
Yep, so Columbo brings up the prospect of a second reel.
Yes.
But it's a difficult one because he's not going to find it. He knows he's not going to find it.
And Keppel's feeling quite satisfied, isn't he, at this point?
Talk about how intelligent the killer must have been, how he might have done his own duplication. But that's going to... It might prove useful.
Yeah. But Keppel says that it must be very frustrating. And I think this is the scene. There's usually a scene in a Columbo episode where both parties, without saying so much, understand what's going at the cat and mouse here. And I think this is the scene where Keppel knows, okay, you suspect me, but I'm confident you cannot prove it.
It becomes explicit in the next scene, but it's implicit at this point, yeah.
So Keppel leaves and Columbo receives a call on line 2. That was quite a funny one as well. Can you remember what happened?
He gets shouted over by the secretary.
Who says, you've got a call on line 2.
Right.
And he looks confused for a second and says, which one's line 2? And she says, the second one.
It's a tricky technique.
Yes.
Especially since he's just spent the last episode monitoring Hayward's phone lines in the same way.
So we're off from there to the screening room again. Columbo enters, and I think Keppel's speaking to a colleague. He asks to speak to Keppel in private.
Yep.
And he informs him that Roger has been shot.
Yeah, Keppel doesn't seem overly upset, but he wants to know if there's a connection between the two killings.
Yeah, before that, this is one of the several times in this episode where the killer plays it correctly and beautifully.
Yep.
So Columbo tries to trap him here.
Yep.
He tells him that Roger has been shot, and Keppel asks how bad. And Columbo says, he's dead.
He's not assumed that he's dead.
No, he's made sure he hasn't assumed that.
Yep.
And then Columbo invites Keppel to join him in attending the murder scene, and Keppel appears amused to admit that he knows that there's a suspicion here. We have a clip.
Yeah.
I was wondering,
You were wondering if I would go with you to the scene of the crime?
how'd you know that?
Lieutenant, I know where you're coming from and I know where you're going, and it isn't very difficult to figure you out.
I don't understand.
For some reason, you have come up with the remarkable notion that I am guilty of Vic Norris's murder. Never mind that I have no motive, or that I scarcely knew the man, or that he was my best client. Your innuendos keep clumping through our conversations like hobnailed boots. And if I didn't find you an extraordinarily amusing fellow, I might even be offended.
Doc, if I had known I was making that kind of impression, I would have left and never come back. The fact of the matter is, I knew I worked for you, and I thought you might want to come. And then I thought you might be able to help. Honest, I think you'd be a great detective.
All right, Lieutenant. I'll play.
Yeah, I think at this point they each know the other is playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And we move to a nice little scene on the way to the scene of the death.
I'll let you describe this, Ian, but what I will say is this. This specific scene I would place in my top 5 Columbo scenes of the entire...
It's only a few seconds long.
Yes, I know it is. But it's fantastic. So explain
Columbo,
what happens.
yeah, Columbo and Keppel are driving to the Magnolia Theatre to see the body, and they come to a junction, and they don't go, and Columbo kind of urging him, and Keppel points out that he doesn't know where the man was shot. How do you know what way to turn? Columbo is almost snapping his fingers. Ah!
Yeah. Well, what is it? Keppel says, nice try, and Columbo nods with, I think, genuine appreciation.
Yeah.
And says, you can't win them all. And I thought that scene there actually sums up a large chunk of what Columbo is all about.
He just tries things.
He does. More than that, he tries things, but it's about the relationship between Killer and it's the butting of heads of two
Sparring. We're talking about
sparring
sparring.
of two fantastic minds. In this case, this exemplifies what is brilliant about the top Columbo episodes.
Well, we've talked about this right from the start of season 1.
Yeah. So it's two people in top form playing a game with each other, and this tiny little scene sums up. It also sums up how Columbo is able to relate and have a relationship. There's a bit of humour there. There's a bit of nodding and knowing. I just think it's, like I say, in fact, it may be my favourite Columbo scene ever. That's how much I enjoy it.
That's a high level of praise.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. So we go to the murder scene. There's
other officers there. They're putting the time of the murder between 7:30 and 7:55 because of the reel that played out.
Yeah, so what happened here? They know when the second reel would have finished.
Yes.
And we know when the first reel would have finished.
Yes.
And we know that
when the second reel did finish.
Yes, or started.
Yeah.
So we know that he must have been in at that time to change it. Therefore, it was somewhere between the start and the end of the second reel.
This confused me a bit, because they say the reel would have been changed at 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
But then they later say that Keppel was with Columbo from 7:30. So how did he have time to change the reel to then get to where Columbo was?
No, I think that he was killed between 7:30 and 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really.
No, he was killed before then.
Yes. But if he was killed before then, Keppel must have waited to change the reel until 7:30.
Sure.
So how did he then get back to where he met Columbo quickly enough to have an alibi for that period?
I think it was literally a sort of 5-minute drive.
Right, so he was just nipped over?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, they found that Roger was killed with a gun registered to Vic Norris, and Columbo almost reluctantly says, we'll have a line-up with Mrs. Norris.
Yeah, he seems very dismayed at this. He knows he has to do it, but he's not.
Yes, but he also knows exactly what's going on and how that gun came to be involved.
And Keppel is very smug in this scene, isn't he? He claims it's case closed, I think.
Yeah, and he also points out that his alibi is Columbo.
Yes. Because he was with him during this time period.
Yeah.
But Columbo insists he still doesn't believe that Mrs. Norris did it.
Yeah.
Even though Keppel claims the evidence points to her and the projectionist being in it together. Keppel claims he's therefore grateful that he does have Columbo for an alibi, as otherwise he would still be his suspect, and Columbo tells him it would certainly be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
I think Keppel responds with, not a tough nut.
Impossible.
So he really is goading Columbo here, or challenging him.
He's taunting him, yeah, but I don't think he's challenging him. I think he thinks he's won at this point. But we move to my favourite scene from this episode.
Brilliant, isn't it?
We go to a golf course, and we know Columbo's good at golf from our first Robert Culp episode.
Well, we know that he's got a good golf swing and a shot. Whether he's a good all-round golfer, he can certainly strike a...
Yeah, I think he's certainly better than he makes out.
Yeah, definitely.
And he again makes out in this episode that he's not good at golf, but we know that's not true.
No. Keppel is playing with friends on the course, and he's totally fed up with Columbo, who appears on
Well, he breaches all forms of etiquette by driving up the fairway.
And again, if we assume that Columbo does know the sort of etiquette of golf, then we know that he's doing this deliberately to just get under the skin of Keppel here.
Of course he is.
And Keppel chastises him for this. Gives him into trouble for his lack of etiquette.
But before that, Keppel just walks off down the fairway, and Columbo has to do a lap of the group and come back round in his buggy beside him.
It's great, isn't it? But even after that, Keppel then picks up he proceeds to swap balls in the fairway. Now,
he cheats at least twice in this scene.
Yeah, the second time he cheats, he admits it. But the first time he's talking about golf etiquette, and he picks up his golf ball and swaps it for another. Now, you can't do that. I'm no golf expert. I used to play, but you're not allowed to swap a ball.
Cheating.
Yeah. And Columbo wants to know how he can possibly get in contact with Tanya.
Columbo is lying at this point. He is faking him out. He has already tried to contact Tanya Baker, and in fact has contacted Tanya Baker.
So Columbo confirms that he has managed to trace her to a hotel in Lisbon, but that she was of little help. However, what happened here was that Columbo are called collect, so therefore the person has to agree to pay for the charges and pick up the phone.
And he said he was Keppel.
Yes.
And when she answered, she said, "You're not Keppel," and hung up.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Tanya Baker basically isn't in this episode. She appears as a still photograph.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a very male-dominated episode. You've got a couple of brief scenes, or one brief scene with Mrs. Norris.
Yes.
Maybe two. And that's it. Really, you've got that receptionist who takes the call.
That's a good point, Ian. I hadn't thought of that before, yeah.
You normally don't have that. Normally they have a couple of female characters in for a bit of balance.
Or even if it's just a secretary.
Sure, but there's always a couple.
Yeah. No, that's a nice observation. Hadn't thought of that before.
But I think there is a domination of the episode by Kulp and Falk.
Yes.
Which you would expect, and perhaps it was just, we're not going to take anything away from this that we don't have to take away from this.
So, Keppel is thinking on his feet here, and he does a decent job. So we've established that he was lying and that he does know Tanya and Tanya knows him.
Yes.
How does he get around that?
Well, he points out that she's not the kind of girl you want to admit to knowing.
And Columbo says that not to worry, he is homicide, not vice. So she's a prostitute.
Essentially, I think what's happened, we can tie this back to the opening scene, is that Keppel has hired her to create the situation where he has leverage over Norris.
Yeah, it's a honey trap.
And he's probably done it numbers of times before.
Keppel asks Columbo to get to the point. His impatience is increasing here.
Yeah, Columbo at this point, I think this is the point where Columbo points out he can't be his alibi for the second murder.
Yeah, well, he gets to the point and he obliges. He accuses him of the double murder in this scene. And Columbo explains how he used the tape recorder. And Keppel is extremely agitated, as you would be.
Yeah.
And tells Columbo that all the sworn testimonies say that they saw him on the stage.
Yep, and nobody's changed their testimony, and until they do, stop talking to me about this.
Mm-hmm. And he picks up his golf ball and throws it into the rough, or throws it from the rough onto the fairway.
Yes.
And he says that no one will ever know, in reference to the golf ball here, and he can now go on with his game.
Yes.
Obviously a reference to the murder and his life.
Yes.
That was a nice touch.
Yeah. I mean, Columbo's pointed out the timing for the second murder is wrong, because there was no nickel.
Yes.
So it could not have been... I'm not sure this is convincing evidence. Roger maybe just didn't use the trick this time. Anyway, it convinces Columbo that the killing was during the first reel.
Yeah. And what I really like, again, we've discussed this in the past, and what I really liked about this is that they both agree that he has no evidence that would stand up in court.
Yeah, Columbo concedes there's not enough evidence to convict.
Now, in the past, this is the type of evidence that we would have finished on with Columbo, and the killer would have succumbed and broken down.
Yeah, even though there's not enough to convict, that's the episode over, because Columbo's got it.
But in this case, they appreciate this is not enough, and Columbo accepts this.
Yeah, we get a brief scene back at LAPD.
Before that, Keppel plays a shot, and Columbo compliments him on the shot.
Yeah.
And actually, we've got a clip here.
Okay.
Nice shot, Doc.
Yes.
For a while there, I thought I was going to spoil your game.
Not a chance, Lieutenant.
That actually reminded me of Columbo's response to one of his earlier shots. He says, it's a good shot, not far, but good.
Yeah. It was just I can understand why this is your favourite. I think it's probably my favourite extended scene in the episode. It really is great, and it just you can tell the relationship between Kulp and Falk. They enjoyed working with each other. They know what each other are doing. It's a tight script, great plot, and I think they're really enjoying themselves.
Yeah. I mean, if I have one criticism of the episode, it's what happens now. It wraps up really quickly.
Okay.
This is also not one of the extended episodes, but we go from this point, Columbo essentially has nothing, to Columbo having everything he needs in a very short period of time.
Okay, so we go to as you say, back to his office, Columbo's office, LAPD HQ.
Yeah.
And Columbo's in the office arguing with a ballistics colleague about where the murder weapon is. And he's telling him that the guns in Keppel's office did not match the caliber of the murder weapon.
Yeah.
And then from nowhere, Columbo has a eureka moment. Well, when I say from nowhere...
Yeah, no, he gets kind of a prompt from his colleague.
when he says...
I can't remember exactly what he says.
You should just go and ask the murderer to tell you where it is.
Yes, and that tied in with the books that he's read. It's about getting information from people.
So Columbo goes down and he grabs a press photographer who he takes along to the office of Keppel.
Yeah, the photographer has significant ethical concerns.
Well, again, this is why it's a great episode. There's a real bit of self-awareness here. So we're in Keppel's office, they wait for him to leave, and then they effectively break and enter.
Yeah.
And they are there to take a number of pictures of Columbo searching or looking, as Columbo says, around the office.
Yeah.
And the photographer, he pulls him up.
Yeah, you have a warrant for this.
Yeah. So it's a nice awareness of what's going on here.
Absolutely.
So we are back to the screening room, and Keppel is sitting with clients, and he's showing them the sales film. But he immediately excuses himself, and he goes to his office and reaches into the lamp that we saw him messing with at the beginning.
Yeah, at which point, again, similar to the conclusion of Death Lends a Hand, you've got a gotcha moment. Columbo's there, he comes out, and red-handed.
So what's happened here? Tell me.
There's a switcher? I've never heard of this before.
Oh yes, it's a
device that switches the caliber of a gun.
Yes.
If this exists, why is it never mentioned in any of the other cases where the bullets don't match the guns that they find?
True, but no, you definitely can do it, and I know that in the current climate in the States, from what I understand, ammunition, for whatever reason, there's a scarcity, or prices have went up because of this scarcity. So, larger calibers, people who have larger caliber guns,
the bullets are scarce.
They're more expensive.
Right.
You don't want to be firing 45s, for example, which might cost, and I'm making this up, it might cost $1 a bullet.
Sure.
So you want to, that's your gun, is a 45.
Yeah. If you're going to kill someone, you want to do it price effectively.
Yeah. But you still want to, for fun, go to the range and shoot your gun.
Okay.
So you can put in an adapter effectively, which will allow you to shoot, for example, 22s.
Smaller bullets,
cheaper bullets, and you can still shoot your gun. So yeah, you can definitely, these do exist.
Okay. Well, this one seems to have the double purpose of also making the gun appear not to have been fired.
Well, I really don't know, but I wouldn't have thought that exists. I wouldn't have thought that if you change the caliber, there's no signs. I'm sure there would still be signs of a gun being fired, no matter what.
Yeah, because you know that you would need the hammer to hit
Yeah.
And that's how you can often tell what gun the bullets come out of, because it's marked by the inside of the mechanism.
So,
but anyway, Columbo has caught him with this device, red-handed, and suddenly it dawns on him what's happened.
He realizes there's a subliminal cuts.
Yeah, I think we can hear him talking about it, can't we?
We can. Let's play the clip.
You used a subliminal cut.
Oh, quite a few subliminal cuts from some photos I made. Came in here with Milk last night and we shot some pictures. It must have been the ones around the lamp. Those are the ones that did it. Maybe it was that fella.
Let me see, may I?
We had him processed last night and we cut him into your movie this morning.
Well, one thing, Lieutenant, you'll have to admit, you never would have solved it without using my technique.
That's right, Doc. If there was a reward, I'd support your claim to it.
I think even in that final scene, we understand the ego. There was a smile on his face as he realised that it was his work, his techniques that enabled Columbo to...
His fantastic scientific methods that must work. Otherwise this episode does not stand up to scrutiny.
No. So that's where we end the episode, and I think, it's fairly obvious that we both really, really enjoyed this episode.
We did. Actually, intriguingly, we've been, during this podcast episode, using subliminal messaging.
We have.
So you've all now been programmed to leave us iTunes ratings and reviews.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see a flood of those now.
Unless, of course, as I mentioned, it's all bunkum.
Well, no, I think we've
please disprove
seen...
me.
We've seen that this works. We'll find out. If there's no new iTunes reviews, it doesn't work.
Yep.
If there's some iTunes reviews and ratings, it
I'll
does
admit,
work.
Then I will admit that I was
You can confess to being wrong.
totally wrong, yeah.
I think also we should add on the iTunes point while we're talking about it. We have seen reviews from Ireland, from America, and from Britain. If you've left a review in another country, we don't get automatically informed. If you could drop us a line on Twitter, on the forums, wherever else, on the ColumboPodcast.com forums or the blog posts.
That would be great.
It would be great to know, because we like to see these reviews. We really appreciate them all.
Whilst we're asking people things we'd like to know, it would be brilliant if you can tell us how and where you listen to the Columbo podcast. We've had people recently on Twitter, it's brilliant, engaging with us, telling us that they listen on commutes.
Yeah, in their
Some
car.
people do it in the morning. So if you can tell us, what is the scenario? Let us picture all these listeners that we appreciate. Are you walking your dog? Are you at the gym? In your car? On a bus? Whereabouts are you? We had before, remember we had someone travelling from, I think it was New York to Boston?
Sure.
I love the thought of someone travelling around Times Square with the Columbo podcast blaring out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you can tell us whereabouts and how you listen to the podcast, that would be great.
Ideal.
It would be. Do we want some trivia and production information?
We always love the trivia.
Okay. So, first aired on the 16th of December 1973 at a 70-minute length. So
Shorter one than usual.
I think it's the shortest we've had so far. Richard Quine was the director. We've had him before, we've discussed him. This is the last of three, the others being Dagger of the Mind and Requiem for a Falling Star.
Yeah, they were consecutive ones.
Mm-hmm. Stephen J. Cannell was the writer.
He's an interesting guy.
Very interesting guy. Again, wrote a lot of the sort of shows of my childhood.
Okay.
A very creative writer as well. So he created the A-Team, 21 Jump Street, Wise Guy, Stingray, The Rockford Files, that's the one, Baretta. So he's very, very famous, prolific, heavyweight writer, and he had a very famous production company logo video.
Ident.
At the end of, I always remember watching the A-Team, and there'll be him at a typewriter. He writes a sheet, finishes it off, pulls it out of the typewriter and throws it up into the air. So
there you go.
That was
iconic.
Him. Very iconic. He was under contract at Universal at the time of writing this episode. It's the only Columbo episode he wrote, unfortunately. And he was desperate to write for the show. Massive, massive fan. Really loved it.
Okay.
But he was a busy guy doing all sorts of other things.
Sure.
And what happened is that there was apparently a writer's strike in Hollywood at the time. And he had studied subliminal marketing when he was at college or university. So he dug out some of his notes. He wrote a spec script and went to Dean Hargrove, the producer, and said, "Here, I have this script. You can use it if you want." And he did use it, and it was a great episode. Cannell loved the sort of cold-blooded, planned murders.
Okay.
So not the sort of heat-of-the-moment, passionate ones. He liked the ones where...
The early Kulp episodes, perhaps?
Yes, where it planned out.
Well, no, hang on, his first one wasn't. It's the second Kulp episode.
Yeah. The first one, for example,
Murder by the
Book would be a favourite. And he loved the sort of cat and mouse. He also loved the sort of okay, like I mentioned earlier, the okay sort of prove it's in you. We both know what the situation is, but come on, give us the where is the proof? Where is the proof?
I think we've got a clip.
we won't play that clip today.
Okay.
And apparently he didn't mention it, but when he was writing Keppel, it was Robert Kulp that he did have in mind to play him.
And he did a good job with it.
And then he went on to work for many a year with Kulp in the TV show The Greatest American Hero. I've not seen that myself, but I've heard of it, and they worked together on that show.
There you go.
So, there we go. Should also mention as well, that Michael Lally was
our old friend.
Yeah, uncredited parking lot guard. So he was in this.
I think we had a comment last week about an actor who appears uncredited in a series of episodes of Columbo. He was in last week's episode and again this week.
Who was that?
Ian Baxter needs credit for spotting this. I believe he's fan of the week this week. I don't know why I'm saying that. But anyway, Mickey Golden is the actor. He appeared uncredited in Lady in Waiting, and in The Most Crucial Game, and in The Most Dangerous Match, and in Double Shock, and in Candidate for Crime, and in Double Exposure, He played the caddy on the golf course.
Yeah. Thank you to Ian Baxter for that.
Yeah, and there's a couple more uncredited appearances
Yeah.
of Mr. Golden to come.
Good stuff, Ian. Cheers.
Yeah.
What we might do every week from now on, if we can remember, if we have time, I'd like to do a sort of brief recap of a few sort of key factors. So, well, what I'd like to do is look at motive, the clues and suspicions, and the gotcha moments, and give our thoughts on if
Sure.
we thought they worked or were strong enough. So, this week's motive was the potential expose of Keppel by Norris for
Yeah.
his underhand and dubious business practices.
It seems unlikely to me that someone who carried out those practices and who was so meticulous would have no better backup plan than to murder somebody.
I must admit, I have no problem with that motive at all.
Okay.
That also reminded me of Death Lends a Hand.
Okay.
When he was blackmailing, that was his...
Sure, that was his thing that he did, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is I don't think the motive comes across clearly. If you don't catch that one moment when it gets mentioned early
Yeah.
in the show, I think you would struggle.
Sure. Clues and suspicions. So, we've got, what set Columbo down this path, and I think there was quite a lot of things here. But the first was, how would you have known that the killer would, how would you have known the killer would have left the screening when he did?
Yep.
The recorder and Keppel's inconsistencies in how he acts under pressure.
Yes.
I think also there was the far too obvious framing of Mrs. Norris.
Yeah, that was quite blatant.
And then we've got Tanya Baker knowing Keppel and Keppel trying to deny it.
Yeah, and I think once you get that stuff that you would need to be involved to know, that
Yeah.
narrows down the field of suspects quite dramatically.
Yes. Although, did Columbo ever describe the motive himself? Did he ever admit to knowing why it was?
Columbo thought it was because the contract was going to be terminated.
Hmm.
He brought that up. That was what he believed the motive to be.
Yes, but that wasn't the motive.
No, but that's what Columbo thought the motive was.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So did Columbo never really establish that he knew why the murder was committed?
No. Because he didn't get anything out of Tanya Baker.
Mm-hmm. The gotcha moment.
Certainly this one was quite persuasive, I think.
Oh, it was certain, because
Yeah.
he's finding the murder weapon.
Yes, in the possession of the killer.
Yeah, in his own office.
Well, one of the murder weapons anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other one was found on the scene.
So, yeah, that was a fair enough, strong gotcha.
Yeah.
All in all, Ian, I think we'll leave it there. I think it was a fantastic episode.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable.
I enjoyed that one. I think that's 3 really good ones in a row. Hopefully next week will be just as good.
We have Publish or Perish.
Okay.
And again, we have a return of a familiar face.
I like it when that happens.
Yeah, I think you'll like this one, or you'll certainly like the guest star anyway, I'm sure.
Great. Well, thanks again to everyone who is participating on ColumboPodcast.com, on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Please keep it up. Anyone who's not been on ColumboPodcast.com, go and have a look. We do show notes every week, and there's usually a great conversation with other Columbo fans taking place there every episode.
Okay, so we'll see you all next week, and thank you again.
Cheerio.
You have been listening to the Columbo Podcast from Heard Yet Media.